Are you wondering if your dirt bike has a blown head gasket? I'm Kelly Figure from MXHideout, and in this video I'm going to show you 7 deadly signs that your dirt bike might have a blown head gasket. Sign number 1 is if it's overheating. Now some bikes, they might have a coolant temp sensor or a temperature light. If it gets into the red zone, that means it's running too hot and it needs to cool down. On an air-cooled bike, it's a little bit harder to tell unless you can place a temperature sticker on the engine somewhere, or if you have like a thermal temp gun. Sign number 2 that you might have a blown head gasket is if coolant is coming out the overflow tube of the radiator. Now the radiator has an overflow hose so that if the water or coolant gets too hot, it's going to build up too much pressure and come out that overflow hose. And this can happen just from normal riding, especially if you're like riding tight trails at low speeds, you're not getting enough airflow. But if it's doing this every single ride, there's a good chance you have a blown head gasket. Sign number 3 is if the coolant is low after every ride. This can happen from coolant going out the overflow hose without even noticing it, or it could be leaking into the engine without you knowing it. And if you're checking the coolant after every ride or before your next ride and you notice that it's low every time, and I'm not just talking slightly below the cap, because if it's above the fins, then you're probably fine. But if it's below the fins when you're looking into the radiator, that means it's low and you might have a blown head gasket. Sign number 4 is if it's running low on compression. You might notice this when you're kickstarting it. It's a little bit easier, takes less pressure, less resistance when kicking it over. Or if you do a compression test using a compression tester and you're getting a lower reading, let's say when you got the bike new or you rebuilt the top end and the compression reads 175 psi, but now when you're testing it, it's 145, it's probably going to need a top end rebuild. And if you're noticing this sign along with one or multiple others, like low coolant every time, that's a good sign that it's a blown head gasket. And if you're looking for a simple guide on how to properly maintain your dirt bike so that you save up to $300 per year because you're saving time, saving money, I got one. It's for 2 and 4 strokes. You can click the link in the description below. Sign number 5 is if it's low on power. This kind of goes with the previous sign, because if it's low on compression, it's not going to have as much power. Most noticeably that low end torque or snap. So when you whack the throttle at low RPM, if it doesn't have that same snap, it's probably low on compression. Sign number 6 is if you're getting constant spark plug fouling. So every time you go ride within like an hour or so, the spark plug is fouling. It's all wet when you pull it out. There's a chance that it's a blown head gasket. If it's always done this, then that's probably not the problem. But if this is a new problem that's getting worse and worse, there's a good chance that your top end needs some attention. Sign number 7 is if you're getting a hesitating or just poor throttle response. So it takes a second to kind of clear out, or maybe it doesn't even clear out at all. Well, that's a good sign that you might have a blown head gasket. Which reminds me, you got a bonus 8th sign. If there is a sweet smell and a different looking smoke coming out the exhaust, if it's very sweet, that's a good sign that you're burning coolant, which means you might have a blown head gasket. If you want to learn what causes a blown head gasket, or what will happen if you keep riding it like that, or how to properly fix it, even if you've already tried replacing the head gasket, check out one of these videos here or subscribe if they're not already out.